this week, there is some heat turning up. Bernie Sanders, the independent senator, he's trying to turn some heat up on the AI companies. He proposed, would you want to own a share in the wealth being created by AI companies? Why not? Interesting idea. That would be our thought of the week.
Sign me up. Sign me up. Free shares in AI companies for sure. So we have that, and then we also have some major announcements from Microsoft and NVIDIA on building new hardware that will actually be like full stack agentic AI tooling from Windows to actually into Azure.
Yeah, and data centers are becoming a center of attention right now. Rising scrutiny, tax incentives, land use, water use, etc. Lots of things going on around data centers.
And we have a lot of announcements coming from Microsoft Build this week. Everything from a new class of agents called autopilots, specifically Scout, and then also new models. I still don't know whether it's called MAI or MIA, but we've got new models for reasoning, imaging, voice. We'll go through all that and more on this week's version of the AI Files.
That and more. Stay tuned for a quick introduction. Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
Yeah, so Bernie Sanders, he's an independent senator, used to be a Democrat. He is known as a Democrat socialist, so it doesn't surprise that this idea comes from him. Basically, what he's saying is he would like actually the American people to own half of big AI as Anthropic, OpenAI, mega IPOs loom through a one-time 50% tax. So it's like this. He's saying, quoting him, the question is not whether AI will change the world. It will. The question is who will own and control that future? Who will benefit from it and who will be hurt by it? Will AI be used to make life better for working families? Will it help us eliminate poverty, extend life expectancies, and help us solve the climate crisis? Or will the future of humanity be determined by a handful of billionaires who have developed AI to become even richer and more powerful than they are? And he continues saying that this legislation would give the public a direct ownership stake in the largest AI companies in America through a one-time 50% tax, not on profits, but on stock. So the way it works is basically in this proposal, I'm pretty sure that this will not go through. But basically what he's saying is that there should be a 50% tax one time, but it is in terms of the stock. So basically the stocks will be taken, right? Not just a one-time profit. And as they continue to make wealth, the wealth of that stock will rise basically, and those will be distributed among the population. And or basically it can help in many ways, right? Help offset the government loan or deficit, budget deficit, and all those kind of things. One of the argument that he's giving is that, look, AI is not something that has been created in isolation. It is something that has actually leveraged the collective intelligence and knowledge of all that humanity has done so far. And I think that argument is very sound, that it is not something that is created, and we all know that AI is not developed using something ground up. It is trained on all the collective intelligence. Basically, we all have contributed. Jamie, all that angry rant that you have done on the social media, right? and everything that I've done, my trail in the World Wide Web is all used to train the AI models, right? So basically, we all have contributed to it. It's not like, and nobody has paid for that kind of the data that has been used. In fact, that is the only part that generally is not disclosed about how it has been trained, right? So that's basically the argument here, that it has leveraged the humanity's collective knowledge, so it should basically pay back in some form. Because right now it seems like it's going to hurt more because of layoffs and things. That's sort of the argument that Bernie Sanders is putting on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice thing to get up on a stage or cabinet meeting or wherever he proposed this. It's obviously not going to go anywhere. I'd be surprised if it even saw the light for any of these things. But it's putting out there at least a social commentary and a talk about the wealth that's being accumulated not only knowledge as wealth, but actual wealth and what it means for a society as we go forward. I think something will change. I mean, I'd love to believe in the utopia things that some of our legislators are, and I would love it if it happened. But there's realities as well. But I get it, and to a certain extent, I do agree. It's just what's practical. Anyway.
And you're right, Jamie. To be honest, it kind of reflects a sentiment in the society, right? I mean, in fact, there were some news polls that were done by NBC News, and one of the polls actually it says that now more people say that um, the I would say disadvantage or dangers basically outweigh the benefits of AI. Right? It's a very, I would say, alarming turn, right, compared to 2 years ago when everybody was excited. Now, I think it's important. It's basically, and it's again, it's not about AI. It's about who is using AI to what purpose. That's what is creating that sentiment, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a household of four, and 3 out of the 4 people in this household think AI is not good. So if that tells you anything.
You are right. Actually, my my kids who are basically Gen Zs, and they tell me that nowadays you are not necessarily looked upon favorably if you openly claim that you used AI to build something or do something. So yeah, it's an undercurrent that is going on there.
Yeah. So maybe we're the ones in the I don't want to say brainwash, but we're the ones in the minority. But I think it's based upon the fact that we see this and we know it's coming, it's here, and it's just getting more and more powerful. Speaking of more powerful, this is a great segue into talking about NVIDIA and a partnership that was just discussed or disclosed with Microsoft. And this is where Microsoft and NVIDIA are going to push new hardware together to actually drive use of localized agents, as well as what it means ultimately of sharing capabilities between those two companies. So this was announced, I think maybe about 2 weeks ago, to some aspects, as the NVIDIA president was talking about this, but it also came up at Build this week with Microsoft. So what is it? So NVIDIA is going to be partnering with Microsoft to build what's called the RTX Spark Windows PCs. I might look at it this way. And by the way, what are these really used for? It's for um, local use of large language models, or I'll call it small and medium language models on local hardware. For the majority of people, and again, I happen to have a rig that has NVIDIA GPUs, but there's a lot of people that actually are using Apple hardware for local runs. I actually know some folks inside of Microsoft that are leveraging that, and that's because the architecture and the things that can be done on those Macs. So with this RTX Spark Windows PC, it's going to allow for 1 petaflop of AI performance and up to 128 gigs of unified memory. And that's the key and critical thing here. It's like when we think about like a GPU, it's specialized for that. This is going to be shared memory in an architecture, and 128 gig. This is going to go against the high-end Mac laptops or the studio environments, but that's not it. So what also was announced was this Spark Station. I think it might also be called TGX Station, and the names might change, but this is where they're going to use the latest and greatest from the NVIDIA. And this is not something that you and I are going to go out and buy. I mean, I would love to have this, by the way, but this is going to be with the Grace Blackwell Ultra architecture with up to 748 gigs of memory to run models. So if you think it this way, you can run like the biggest of models on this. It's almost like a data center in a box to run in a very small space. Even potentially, if you did want to outlay, I'm sure it's not going to just be a couple thousand, and probably tens of thousands. But this is a new way of running these models, because everyone is starting to talk about security. How can we take these models and run them in our own environments to cut down on token costs? By the way, you probably heard a whole bunch about token maxing over the last couple of weeks. So this ties into that whole sentiment. NVIDIA is going to be putting more things into this as well. Integration with their OpenShell into GitHub Copilot. So being able to run everything in these environments. The other thing too is that this is really about full stack deployment. So they're treating this as agents as a systems for local hardware, doing cloud scale inferencing and doing it securely, but doing it all from a local standpoint. So this really means not only agents tying back into data, having your data warehouses, the ability for model choice, all within a single governed, secure framework. So there's other things I kind of mentioned. Foundry is going to be able to have now the NVIDIA models, the Nematron 3 Ultra, 3.5 ASR. So these are all things that are also were announced in this you know, partnership or expanded partnership between the two.
Yeah, this was actually, was in basically Jensen Huang from NVIDIA. He was invited. He joined virtually. He was in Taiwan, and talked about this thing. I liked how Satya was defining some of these things, right? These collaboration. He was saying data center on your desk, basically, right? Some of these machines are so powerful, and they were talking about that, when the early 2.5 GPT 2.5 was being done, that kind of power that they were using in the GPU, and now that is something that now you can see being available inside a laptop, right? It's amazing, right? I mean, how the power is, and still it is not something that, you know basically that is enough, to be honest. But that's an amazing power that now you have on the machine. No wonder now the build was also full of, like you can run the kind of a huge model, frontier model actually on your machine. So much will get enabled with this power. I can't wait. Jamie, I hope it doesn't cost $100,000 to buy one. Would love to get this kind of machine.
Yeah, me too. I mean, if it's in the Spark Windows laptop machines, that will probably, my guess, will be between like 3 to maybe 4,000, which is
Mm.
doable. For a high end machine. I don't know if we're going to be able to get the data center version. Might have to take that one through to the wife to get that one approval. But
Yeah. Yeah, you need to run a motion and get a voting done. Okay, let's talk about some of the other news items. President Trump has signed a narrower executive order on AI oversight after industry objections. So there was another executive order in works that initially called for like kind of 90 days advance release of for the review to the government bodies, and basically they will basically review those things. But then it has been now diluted, and it has become now voluntarily submission, so it's not a mandatory. Now they're asking AI companies to voluntarily submit their new models to the government for testing or evaluation 30 days before releasing the products to the public. Now industry was requesting even lesser. They were asking for a 2-week window, but that's what it is right now, 30 days. Now the order also very clearly says that this is not kind of like making it tough, because they're very sensitive about not losing, because of these tight restrictions, the AI race, right? It should not become like in a Europe model. So the White House is calling it out in the order that nothing in this section shall be construed to authorize the creation of a mandatory governmental licensing, pre-clearance, or permitting requirements for the development, publication, release, or distribution of new AI models, including frontier models. So kind of like putting the cap on, don't make it a kind of a license uh, harassment and all those things. It also basically, the executive order directs the Department of Justice to treat crimes like AI assisted hacking and unauthorized access as a high priority enforcement area. The other thing is that we talked about data center a little bit. The data centers are also gaining attention. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on Friday, he basically said that he plans to temporarily halt offering tax breaks to data centers that apply to build in the state, and intends to call on other lawmakers and other groups to hash out a framework in the fall to basically how the centers should be developed. Because data centers have been getting some tax breaks from the different states, and but now it is, as we talked about it earlier as well, that there is a little bit of a backlash developing. In fact, that is reflected in what happened. Kevin O'Leary, the famous Shark Tank panelist, he has pledged to cut the proposed 40,000 acre Stratos. Stratos is the name of the data center, AI data center that he was developing in the basically the Box Elder County. Now this is in Utah, and this is in fact he's pledging to cut it in half, that project. In fact, one of the Senate president in Utah, he had asked actually to make it just basically cut it by 75%. There's a lot of backlash again because of the water usage, because of the environmental impact, because of the local population not really liking the idea of being surrounded with the data centers. In the other news also related, Erin Brockovich, right? I think a lot of people know that from famous movie. Julia Roberts played that character. She's that's a real person actually. It's an environmental activist, Erin Brockovich. She has now a new mission. She's now actually tracking the data centers and its impact on the local community. So basically, she has created, in fact, they have a new website, they are tracking all the data centers, and they will want to bring more transparency to data center construction and the impact those will have on the nearby communities. So data centers are actually going to go get it. It's going to become tough and tough for them to get approvals and building them.
Yeah, the data center is definitely a hot topic, and it will more likely be woven into the political season as we move forward. So,
Yeah.
hearing a lot of noise and some things already being, stopped or halted, or let's look at things a little bit deeper. So,
In fact, there was a viral one of the image went viral, Jimmy. That one of the person in Utah, basically what he did is he put a sign on in his front yard, and it said that this house now identifies as a data center, and it can use water unlimited without paying, something like that. Basically, making fun of that. There is actually drought control in the state of Utah right now, but basically, data center kind of have no restrictions. So it was a basically satire on that one. Anyway, moving on quickly, rapid news. The Anthropic has confidentially filed for an IPO, and it seems like OpenAI is also imminently readying for filing that IPO as well. This is a year of IPO. There are a lot of labs that are planning to file the IPO, particularly most famously Anthropic and OpenAI. Now, Databricks seem to be like not very thrilled about it. They don't want to get crowded in that year where these two frontier labs are leading the IPO, and Databricks might actually defer theirs probably to next year, just so that they don't get overwhelmed with this. There's a lot of this valuation going on. In fact, Google, basically the Alphabet, the parent of Google, also has done some additional share release, etc. Valuation. They got oversubscribed. They were expecting $40 billion. They got $45 billion, things like that. So hot market when it comes to AI.
yeah. So speaking of AI, and what's hot is how do you get more context out of these models? So memory or efficiency in memory is super important. What OpenAI just announced this week is a updated memory system for ChatGPT, which basically is going to keep better insights about you, your preferences, keep the context in terms of your conversations across different conversations more fresh. These are things that you're going to see it will actually align with and build into ChatGPT. And you can think of this in a couple different ways. One, it's going to be certainly more useful because it's going to understand the things that you may have said before. I've actually seen some of this because I've been using, I've mentioned this multiple times over. I have a subscription to ChatGPT, and I was using something, and it's like, oh, because you mentioned this, let me kind of bring that into this conversation. I mentioned nothing about it, which it's a little freaky at times, but it does make sense that it knows more about it, about you or it, whatever you're talking about, and we'll bring it in. So it persists more of that context. It actually makes then the assistance and the ways that you use ChatGPT more personalized, and you don't have to like repeat yourself multiple times over. And that will help with the visibility. It helps with just overall understanding. But these are things then you have to take into account. How do I then use that in the best way possible? Now, again, this was for ChatGPT. It's obviously based upon the way that they're actually using these models. So it'll be interesting to see if that makes its way into some of the underlying API and the way that we use these models more from an enterprise perspective. Other thing in the news, and this one I just thought was interesting, just spend a little bit here, is that Cloudflare actually showed some data where it's now showing that requests into these AI models are now coming in more from bots rather than humans, specifically 57% versus 43 roughly from humans. So this is actually a differentiation now because we're starting to see the rise of more automated systems. And I think this is just going to grow, and it ties into all the things we just said. You're going to need more data centers. You're going to need more powerful models. You need more memory, more context. But these bots are actually now doing more work. And I think we're going to see even more of that as enterprises, take up the adoption and build more things with quote unquote these models and harnesses.
Martin Scorsese, the legendary filmmaker, he has signed on as a partner and advisor to AI image generation startup Black Forest Labs. It's a German company famous for their models, and he's saying that he's basically, you would assume that he's probably the classical film director, legendary, would probably not like use of AI, but he's saying no. Actually, for 70 years, I've been creating my own storyboards. He says this basically helps him communicate his vision to cinematographers and production designers for far faster and more efficiently. So, there's goodness in it, and I think he recognizes that. Although he's going to limit that to that purpose only, not for like creating the entire, the film itself, but for a specific purpose. And I think that's a general sentiment. Like AI can be helpful in lots of different things. That's what basically Martin is talking about.
So there's a lot that occurred at Build. We're going to just scratch the surface over the next couple of minutes, but one of the main ones is Microsoft. When I say Build, sorry, this is Microsoft Build. Is the announcement of their first autopilot. Now everyone has seen copilots from Microsoft over the last couple of years, and the important word there is co-pilot. These are autopilots, and I'll just use a quote that was used at Build, and it's what happens when your AI assistant stops waiting for prompts and starts keeping work moving at its own pace, scheduling meetings, spotting risks, preparing materials, and blocking time before you ask. That is the concept behind this first autopilot, which is called Scout. If you've been following a little bit, there was some rumors that Microsoft was, I don't even call it rumors, Microsoft was working on incorporating some of the open cloud capabilities into its tooling. And this is one of those first pieces. If you look behind the scenes with Scout, it actually leverages some core concepts from OpenClaw. It's got a heartbeat. It has obviously skills, integrations, which are MCP server integrations. But the key thing here that Microsoft has done, it's been focused around the Microsoft ecosystem, tied into M365. So this first autopilot, Scout, is focused on how do you make your job, your life easier within your day-to-day work. And again, a lot of that is with email, calendaring, work products, and whether it's Word or PowerPoint, Excel. So that's been available, if you will, just working those things through Copilot or CoWork. But now there's this level of autonomy within Scout that allows it to have that heartbeat, to automatically wake up and do things for you, and allow it to basically think and create sub-agent processes that will take over and do the things that are necessary based upon what you either ask it to do or keep it to have it keep a tab on. Now that's high level. Like from a technical perspective, yes, it's got some of these underpinnings with OpenClaw. But what's interesting here, and this is I'll call it the Microsoft flair to this, is that these agents get identity. They have a control plane that's allowed to be used for them. So it's governed by Entra identity. So it makes the things that it does attributable and manageable through that same directory that enterprises have built and the policies that they're enforcing based upon what things can or can't be done within their environment. So certainly this lends itself to a deeper dive. I do plan on actually doing a AI labs probably over this weekend because I've been tinkering. Not only it used to be called Claw Pilot internally, but it got an official name which is Scout. And I've played with the Claw Pilot. Still hard to roll that off the tongue. But as of 2 days ago, I started to get and use Scout. And it's, by the way, I should have said this up front. Scout is not readily available to everybody. You have to be one of those frontier firms. And it's on invite only at this point. As being a Microsoft employee, it's one of the great benefits. I get to play with these things before a lot of people do. So I'll go through at least 2 different scenarios on how I'm using Scout today. So keep that in the back of your head and look out for that new AI labs that will hopefully drop in a couple of days.
Awesome. This was actually very refreshing. I think Microsoft has been very quick to adopt to this trend, and Peter Steinberger was there. So yeah, I think Microsoft has done a really good job, I would say, adopting this kind of a framework and opening it up and making it safe, right? I mean, there has been a lot of concerns around whole claw kind of like, the people are like anxious whether it's safe or not, but I think this is a really good way to actually use it safely.
Yeah, I mean, in the bottom line, it wraps the Microsoft security and enterprise umbrella around a portion of OpenClaw. It's
Yeah.
not everything.
Yeah.
I'll go into some details because, like I said, I use OpenClaw already today for a lot of agents that I have for weather-related pieces. So I could talk based upon my experiences and the things that I see that are there and not there within Scout. And again, Scout is just the first one of these autopilot features. Another quick thing just on Build, Microsoft did announce Microsoft IQ. There's been IQs around for a while, like you've got the work IQ, which is centered around work products and the things that you build within the Microsoft ecosystem, aka Teams meetings, Word, emails, that capability. But then there's Fabric IQ, which is rooted in enterprise data through Fabric, and then Foundry IQ, which again allows you to connect into a enterprise search capability with LLMs or AI embedded within that search capability. And then there's a new one, WebIQ. This is a live web grounding. And it is, if you think about, like, hey, let me use a tool to go out to the web, this is actually does that web grounding, but does it with blazing speed, 2.5 times faster than some of the existing methods or protocols that live out there today. So WebIQ, Foundry IQ, Fabric IQ, and Work IQ make up what is now called Microsoft IQ, which embodies all 4 of those.
It's a great, actually, I would say, I think it's a great framework, basically establishing an intelligence layer in your architecture, which can be used very effectively. You don't have to do the RAG. You don't have to define your data sources every time. You do it once. It's all governed by security. I'm already talking with some of the customers as well, for example, and they are very interested in adopting, because then it can become a layer in their architecture to establish. And they don't need to worry about security, governance, and all those things, because it's all operating within the Microsoft framework. Okay, what else, Jimmy?
So there is a lot with various different models that Microsoft put out there. So there's the Maya thinking. So I kind of alluded to this before. Microsoft did have a couple of different models previously. I'll call it small language models. This is their first foray into a thinking model that is more on the medium scale. What's interesting about this is when this was announced, that build, it was talked about benchmarks. Everyone does benchmarks. This is going off on my head, but I think a 35 billion parameter at any given time. So, if you think about what GPT, the OSS, that's a 20 billion parameter. You've got Gemma, which I think is a 28 or 30 billion parameter. This is 35. Why that's important, 35 billion parameter, the benchmarks on this align it with, or comparable with, Opus 4.6. Now, is 4.6 the latest from Anthropic? No. But if you think about the efficiencies of a medium scale large language model that can think and has the same capabilities at Opus 4.6, which was only released, 6 months ago, that's a really good jump for really the first model that Microsoft is putting out at that scale or competing with a frontier firm. So it leads on price performance, its efficiency, as I mentioned. It has 128K context window, but that's not it. There are other model family releases. You've got the Maya Image 2.5, as well as a Maya Image 2.5 Flash. So these are the text to image generation. It allows image to image editing as well. And then you've got Maya Voice 2, which allows for multilingual speech understanding as well as generation, voice cloning, the ability to do voice prompting, which again uses short audios to actually guide a tone for what you want to come out. And then there's also Maya Transcribe 1.5, which is for transcription, improved accuracy, does it fast as well in terms of performance. So all that and more. There was also Majorana 2, which was the next generation quantum chip. This is a 1,000 time improvement in reliability over Majorana 1, which wasn't that long ago. And it holds the state for roughly 20 seconds, potentially up to a minute. So there's been a lot of strides being made in quantum computing, what is capable with Majorana 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think this quantum is such an interesting field, right? I mean, they're moving from micro to milliseconds, and that is a huge achievement, right? Holding that qubit for that long, but that such a short life of the qubit is enough to do actually very powerful computation. Quantum is just amazing, intriguing field. I would say I barely understand 1% of it, but that alone is enough to actually keep your interest. I don't think anybody fully understand it in the words of quantum professors itself. But it's an amazing thing. A few more announcements quickly from Bill that came out. One of them was actually the Microsoft approach is based on the frontier tuning. They're talking about, not just use your data to tune your model, but also, use the reinforcement learning to train models on how work actually happens, not just on data, right? So it's not just the data, but actually the enterprise workflows, the tool usage, and user feedback to mimic the real decision making. And that's what they're going to provide as a frontier tuning. And basically, you train your own models, but not just on the data, but the work, right? So that's the real context that will be used in the frontier tuning. And I think that's important because the approach what they're talking about is that it's not just don't just use AI, but basically own and shape your own AI models at the enterprise scale. The other important announcement was related to device, actually, Project Solara. It's a chip to cloud platform designed for open multiple agent world, right? It's like you are moving away from your desk. So how do you continue using your agent? So there are two concepts that they announced. One concept device is basically the badge which you carry around. It basically it has a camera, it has chip and all those things. It has a screen as well, and ordinarily it will just look like a badge, access badge. But then you can actually interact with it, you can speak into it, and then you can basically instruct it, and it has an agent that actually continues to work. You can use that agentic. So you're carrying the agentic device with you, and it is in collaboration with Qualcomm. So it's a wearable. They are using the wearable silicon from there. The other is a desk device concept, which you are not supposed to like carry around, but it's basically sits on the device, kind of a speaker size, you can say, a small speaker size where you can basically interact with it, like like Alexa or Siri. Siri not really has a separate device, but the Alexa devices, right? I mean, something like that. You can actually use it again, and you can switch back and forth between your laptop and that associated device. Again, all of this comes with the authentication, with the enterprise governance, so it can be readily approved and used in the enterprises. But again, the agents run on those, and you can use it to interact with that as well.
And I'll just leave you with this as a cliffhanger: is the new GitHub Copilot app. Might it be the next super app from Microsoft to tie all things together? That'll be my cliffhanger.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you, Jamie. Talk
Again,
soon, everybody.
all right,
Bye
time.
bye.
See ya.